Welcome to Lifestyle School, the podcast where we simplify healthy living so you can create the life you desire. I'm your host, Hope Plack, and today we are talking about something that could be holding you back without you even realizing it, and that is living on autopilot. Recently, I was scrolling on Instagram, unfortunately, and I came across a study by reviews.org that revealed Americans check their phones on average of 205 times a day. I mean, let that sink in. I couldn't believe it. I felt shocked and embarrassed by seeing this number. Um, and the statistic really made me pause and reflect on my own habits. Like I was asking myself, am I really picking up my phone that often? And I realized over the next few days after seeing that, I started to pay attention to how many times I was mindlessly reaching for my phone. And the experience was incredibly eye-opening and unfortunately not in a positive way. I realized how much of my behavior was automatic, so ingrained in my day that I didn't even think about it. And it made me wonder, what other habits in my life am I doing on autopilot? And what might be keeping me from living with intention and moving towards my goals, whether that be for my business, for my health, for my relationships? What are these things that are happening on autopilot? If you find that you feel stuck in cycles of behavior that don't serve you, especially as we're in January and you likely have new goals that you're working for, whether it's mindless eating, procrastination, or just zoning out on social media, this episode is for you. We're going to talk about how to turn off autopilot and take back control of your habits and your health. Now, let's start by talking about what autopilot behaviors are and why they're so common. Autopilot happens when we go through the motions without being fully aware of our action. It's not always a bad thing. Habits and routines, they save us mental energy and they help us, get through really busy days. But when those autopilot behaviors don't align with our goals or our values, they can hold us back. Think about it. How often have you reached for a snack out of boredom or scrolled through your phone when you felt stressed or avoided exercise because it felt easier to stay on the couch? These moments might seem, really small at the time, but over time, they truly add up. And after more than a decade of coaching, I've realized that food and exercise are just a piece of this puzzle when it comes to our health. To achieve lasting health, we have to address the systems and habits that guide our daily lives. And that's exactly what we focus on in Lifestyle School, and really a big reason why I created Lifestyle School and named it Lifestyle School. It's not just about changing our physiology, regulating our hormones for weight loss. It's about creating systems and checks and balances that help you sustain those changes through the ups and downs of life. Because if you've been around for any amount of time, life doesn't stop. It continues to happen. There's always bumps in the road, and it's not a, straight upward process. There are ups and downs as we go on this journey. So today we're going to explore how to identify and interpret autopilot behaviors and how to replace them with intentional habits that align with our goals. And by the end of this episode, my hope is that you'll have some practical steps to start making real and lasting changes when it comes to these automatic behaviors. So I want to share a personal story that helped me understand autopilot and can impact our health. So a few years ago, I noticed a pattern of my own behavior. I realized whenever my kids were sick or really whiny, I'd find myself in the kitchen eating whatever processed junk food I could get my hands on, whether that was chips or cookies, whatever I could find. I'd become like a scavenger. And it wasn't about hunger, it was about coping. The first few times it happened, I didn't think much about it. I obviously didn't feel good about it, but it happened and life continues on. But after a while, I started to notice how bloated and sick I felt after. And, it caused me to pause and realize that this wasn't just a random occurrence, it was a pattern of behavior. And my kids crying was triggering me to feel very stressed out. And my automatic response was to self soothe with food, which obviously is not in line with my health goals. So once I was able to recognize that pattern, I really had a choice in that moment. Because prior, I didn't really have a choice because I was doing it without thinking. Where once I realized that pattern, I had this choice. And I started experimenting with different ways to cope. And I'm happy to report now when I feel that stress building, if I'm at home and having a hard day with the kids, I am much more likely to call a friend or step outside for fresh air, versus, diving into the snack pantry to find whatever I can get my hands on. And am I perfect? Absolutely not. You can still find me there once in a while. But the difference is that I am now aware of this trigger that will cause me to go down this path of automatic behavior that is not in line with my health goals. And I have systems in place now to help me make a better choice more often than not. And this is a really, really big part of what we teach in lifestyle school because it's not just about learning how to manage your food, your exercise, or your fasting. It's about understanding your patterns, building self awareness, and creating habits that support your life. Because health isn't about being perfect. It's about having a plan that works even when life gets messy. And I don't know about you, but my life gets messy sometimes. So I want to now kind of dive into the heart of today's episode on how to identify and break free from these autopilot behaviors because we know we all have them and how to intentionally replace them with habits that truly support our health. And this isn't about quick fixes or temporary changes. This is about creating a lifestyle that lasts with systems and tools to guide you through life's ups and downs. And in lifestyle school, we teach that health isn't just about changing our physiology. It's about building these sustainable tools. And if you don't have that, everything else isn't really going to work. So, our first step to breaking these autopilot behaviors is awareness, right? Because we can't change a behavior if we don't even realize that we're doing it. And awareness is about shining a light on the patterns and habits that are running in the background of our life, often without even our conscious input. So, what I want you to do for the next few days is I just want you to start to observe your actions, keep a small journal, or maybe use the notes app on your phone to jot down some notes of when you catch yourself doing something on autopilot that isn't serving you. So, if you have an autopilot to go to the gym every day, that is great. And it's great to notice these positive habits we have as well. But specifically, things that you find that aren't serving your goals, I want you to start taking notice. So, maybe that's mindlessly snacking or reaching for a snack while you're watching TV. Maybe it's reaching for your phone in a moment of feeling bored or stressed, or maybe it's avoiding movement or exercise without a second thought because it doesn't feel easy in the moment, or it's easier to, do something else. The goal here isn't to judge ourselves, it's to notice. And what we're doing is we're just gathering data about our habits, just like a scientist would, right? Ask yourself in these moments, what am I feeling right now? Was I feeling, before I did this behavior? Try to think back. What was like the trigger that led me down this path to this behavior? When I was trying to figure out why I was mindlessly, eating this food that I wasn't hungry for and that didn't make me feel well, it took a little bit of thinking to realize, oh, I'm sitting here in the kitchen eating because I realized, like, I feel really frantic and frazzled because one of my kids was just crying nonstop for like 2 hours because they didn't feel well or something, And so thinking through how you're feeling right now and then, what led to that feeling can be such an important thing to realize on this journey. And then also think, how often do I do this without even realizing it? Maybe it's something sporadic like sick children or whining children, or maybe, it's conversations with a person in your life that are hard. Maybe it's stress at work. It could be all sorts of different things. Maybe it's, if you're thinking back to a couple episodes ago, maybe it's doing the day you have to do your budget. Awareness is foundational, and it's so important to uncover these hidden patterns and connect the dots between these triggers and behaviors, because it's going to really start to give you agency over the things that you do day to day. The second thing that I want to spend some time on is reframing failures from something to feel bad about and guilty to learning opportunities. So we've all had moments where we feel like we've failed. I have had so many moments, on this journey where I feel like I have totally failed. I haven't done what was healthy. I didn't do what made me feel good. Like I didn't eat the food that was going to make me feel good. I ate the food that maybe sounded good in the moment and, never really satisfied the way I was hoping it would. So whether it's overeating, skipping your workouts, or giving into those cravings, the thing that I want you to realize in this moment is that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's a part of the process. So when you're experiencing a setback, instead of beating yourself up about it, getting really negative, try reframing it as a learning opportunity and ask yourself, again, what led me to this moment? What were these sequence of events that led me here? And in the future, how can I prepare differently for this situation so I can make a different decision? For example, let's say you find yourself at the bottom of a bag of chips after a stressful day, and instead of feeling guilty, rewind the situation. Was it stress at work that triggered me? Was it a moment? Was there a moment, as I spiraled downward where I could have made a different choice in my response? Maybe called that friend, maybe just go outside and walk for 3 or 5 minutes. This reflective practice is incredibly powerful, and it is super important that we shift our perspective on failure to every moment that we don't live up to these, standards that we've set for ourselves. Every time we have a perceived failure, we have to start thinking of it as actually data that helps us understand ourselves better. Sorry, someone just called me. Because the more you learn about your triggers, the better equipped you're going to be able to handle them in the future. And here's a bonus tip: start small. Don't try to fix everything at once. If stress triggers, late night snacking, focus on creating one alternative response, like drinking a glass of water or journaling or walking or calling a friend, and then celebrate those small wins, because as you make these small changes, they do create confidence within ourselves and they help us build momentum. So the next thing I want to touch on in regards to this topic is sitting with discomfort. And this is something that I am working on in my own life. And I'm going to be honest, it is tough. But it's also one of the most important things. In today's world, we're constantly looking for ways to avoid discomfort. We're scrolling on our phones, we're snacking mindlessly, we're binge watching TV, all to distract ourselves from difficult emotions or situations that life puts in front of us. But here's the truth: Discomfort is where growth happens. And when we allow ourselves to sit in our feelings without numbing them, we can gain a deeper understanding of ourselves. And I want to give you an example of this. And fasting, I think, is a great chance to sit in discomfort. When you fast, especially in the beginning, you're going to feel discomfort. You might feel hungry, you might feel bored, or even frustrated. And in those moments, you have two choices. You can distract yourself, or you can lean into that discomfort and ask yourself, what am I really feeling right now? And I had a friend over a decade ago. She's a physician's assistant and she practices functional medicine. And we were talking about nutrition coaching. And she said, I have decided I'm not going to take clients unless they're in therapy. And I totally agreed with her. And every year I've been doing this, I agree with that sentiment more because so much of our behaviors and our decisions, especially around food, aren't even about food, right? They're about other things in our life. And the healthier that we can become on the inside, the healthier everything else on the inside, I should say, emotionally, spiritually. That is going to bleed into our physical health as well. They're all interconnected. And so practicing, just sitting for 5 to 10 minutes each day to sit quietly without distractions, to, maybe meditate on scripture or after affirmations or something that you are, wanting to focus on as you go throughout the day. It's going to feel uncomfortable, but it's going to build resilience over time if you just allow yourself to sit and just be. And you'll start to realize that you don't need to escape discomfort, that you are indeed strong enough to just sit with it and to handle it. So, moving on, breaking autopilot behaviors isn't about willpower. And I think so many times when we think about nutrition and eating and losing weight, we think it's all about willpower, a little different. It's all about creating systems that make the right choices easier. Willpower is like taking a battery and it drains throughout the day, but systems are sustainable. So, for some examples of systems you can put into practice, is we could look at our environment, like our environment design. For me, I know there's some foods I just like can't buy and have in the house if I don't want to end up eating them all. So keeping healthy snacks visible and maybe foods that tempt you out of reach and out of sight, like putting the fresh fruit on the counter and putting the chips at the back of the cupboard that you rarely open. That could be an example of designing your environment to help you be more successful. And sometimes when we're talking about designing environments, you have to be black and white, be like, I can't have these in the house or this isn't going to work for me. I do think there is a place for that. Maybe when it comes to meal planning, take 30 minutes on the weekend to plan your meals for the week or create like a meal calendar for, 4 weeks and then you rotate through those meals. What this does is it removes the guesswork and it makes eating healthy meals much more automatic because you have a plan. You know what meat needs to be thawed or you need to have on hand for that meal. You can do some prep work ahead of time. That is going to put a system in place that is going to help you be much more likely to be on track. And, the late night meals of crackers and cheese are going to be much less likely to happen. And then habit stacking, pairing a new habit with an existing one is a really great place to start. So if you already have a habit that you're really consistent with, you're good at, like you always, brush your teeth at X time, stack onto that habit, hook a habit on there. So it's like every time you brush your teeth, then you floss, right? That would be a really easy one if you're not a good flosser. I was recently told I need to do a better job flossing. So here we are talking about it. But, another example is drinking a glass of water, um, right when you wake up in the morning as you're getting ready for the day, go get a big glass of water and put it on the bathroom counter with you as you're brushing your teeth, putting your makeup on, doing your hair, getting dressed, whatever that looks like. That could be a great way to get started on your water right away in the day. And lastly, scheduling your priorities. Yeah, I always say this, but I think it's so good. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And we always have time for what's important. So we have to treat our workouts, our meal prep, our self-care activities like appointments, like, a doctor's appointment you're showing up for, and you're going to get a penalty if you don't show up. Add them to your calendar and then honor them like you would any other commitment. And lastly, in this regard, I want to talk about when it comes to these automatic behaviors is building in an accountability and support system. So the last piece of this puzzle truly is, I think accountability. Breaking autopilot behaviors can feel extremely isolating, but the truth is that you don't have to do it alone. And finding someone who can support you, whether it's a friend, family member, maybe a coach, share your goals with them and ask them for encouragement when you need it. And a little plug here, as a part of Lifestyle School and just my community, we have a Monday community meeting that people can come to. It's free. It's 30 minutes. You get, a quick little 10 to 15 minutes of education to hopefully inspire you and encourage you on your journey. And then we all go around and share wins and fails from the past week, and then what our goal is for the upcoming week. And I'll tell you this, we moved from Minnesota to California 2.5 years ago. And previously, for the previous 8 years, I had been working part-time at a functional medicine clinic. And so I had my, community there in regards to nutrition. And then I also had friends at my gym. And moving across the country, well, first, I couldn't find a gym for like 8 months, which was really, really hard. But then I didn't have any community around nutrition, whatever, at all. And it was incredibly difficult to do that. And so that's why I created my Monday community Zoom meeting. Is it was like, I need the accountability for myself. And, I think a lot of other people have been blessed by it as well. And I will tell you at this point, it is a highlight of my week. We're a small but mighty group, but anyone is welcome, and you don't have to share if you don't want to. You can just observe. But community, we're not meant to do life alone. And I think if the past 5 years since COVID has really taught us anything, is that we need a community. We need a community around us to support us, to encourage us, because life is it's too short. And so when we have accountability, we're much more likely to stick with our habits. And I mean, there's research to back that up. And it's not just about having someone to cheer you on. It's about being part of a group that understands the journey that you're currently on and pushes you to keep going on those hard days. Because, I hate to break it to you, but there are going to be hard days on this journey. So breaking autopilot behaviors really takes time. It is work, but I want you to know that it is absolutely worth it. And really, it truly starts with awareness. It starts with reframing setbacks and seeing them as learning opportunities, and practicing sitting with discomfort, creating systems for success, and then leaning into accountability and support. And that's really what we're all about here at Lifestyle School and in my community. And so one question, that I hear often, what if I, notice a pattern, but I'm continuously finding myself struggle to change it? And what I want to lead with is first, you have to give yourself grace because we're, imperfect humans. Sometimes I feel like, things would be easier if I was just a robot and could just like force myself to make the right decision every time. And I just want you to know change takes time. And the fact that you're noticing the pattern is already a huge step in the right direction, right? Because, prior to not even being aware of it, you weren't even thinking about change. So start small, pick one thing, one behavior that you can focus on making a single change. So, for example, if you find yourself snacking when you're stressed, replace that snack with a glass of water or a glass of tea or a quick walk. And when you have those small wins, you have to celebrate them. And our community meeting, I encourage us to always celebrate those small wins because they do truly add up over time. So, to start to wrap up here, this week, I want to challenge you to identify one autopilot behavior in your life. And maybe it's checking your phone, maybe it's mindless snacking or skipping workouts. And I want you just to spend a few days observing that habit and ask yourself what triggers it and how can I create a system to support a different choice? And I just want to encourage you to take one small step to interrupt that pattern and then track how it feels to make that intentional choice. And remember, every small step you take is a step towards lasting change. Turning off autopilot isn't easy, but it is one of the most impactful things you can do for your health and your life. And when you start living with intention, you set the stage for growth, for resilience, and long-term success. So, wherever you are on your journey, I just want you to remember that you have the power to make a different choice one step at a time. So I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in today's episode of Lifestyle School. I hope you found something valuable to take onto your journey towards a healthier, more intentional life. And if you enjoyed this episode, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment. Please subscribe to this channel. Give us a 5-star review and share it with someone who you think could benefit from this conversation. By subscribing and commenting and giving us that 5-star review, you will help other people find Lifestyle School as well. And don't forget to follow us over on social media at Hope Plaque Coaching for more tips and inspiration. And if you're ready to take things to the next level, join my emailing list for exclusive content and updates. And if you haven't already checked it out, my course, Lifestyle School for Weight Loss, where we dive deeper into creating the sustainable, healthy lifestyle you've been looking for. So I just want to say thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time on Lifestyle School, where we build the habits that transform your health and your life.